Did you spit in this? He's not even going to answer me.
You want some tequila?
Careful. Yeah, pour it in front of me. We're going to pour Polite Fight out in front of you. I'm John Tatey, your editor-in-chief. This is Gus Spellman, video editor extraordinaire. You wanted to kick off today's discussion of Fargo with sort of a philosophical question. So go ahead.
Well, something that I think is sort of germane to the discussions we always have with this show is how far can you push any observation analytically? How deep can you go, or how deep should you go? And so there's just like a small thing I noticed in the very first shot of the episode, that tracking shot that opens it. You'll see right after it cuts to the first split screen, there's 2 short jump cuts, and you barely notice it.
Very
you
quick,
have to think,
but the fact that there's 2 of them right in succession.
It seems like they did this specifically, but what can you really draw from that? You could just say like it's about like the disconnectedness of Peggy's mind, because it seems like this tracking shot is really her like working through the maze that she's created for herself. But it's the kind of thing that's almost seems like it's supposed to go unnoticed. So I'm wondering, what do you think of this? Do you think it's right to analyze what this is?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it really applies to a lot of what we've talked about here on Polite Fight. I really view myself as a critic as in having a conversation with the work, right? And I think, you know, let's take those jump cuts. You sort of interrogate those jump cuts for meaning. You look at them, you watch it again, you consider the context, you really try to apply as many lenses to it as you can and see if the work comes back to you with anything. See if connections start to emerge. When I feel like I'm sort of pushing something on the work and the work's coming back to me and sort of being like, I don't know, maybe, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm overdoing it.
Yeah, I think my approach is, just a little bit different in that I'm not looking for things and trying to find meaning. I'm always more, when I'm analyzing, looking at the work and then looking at this little mirror that I have on the side that shows myself and my reaction to it. And I feel like looking at how you were affected just naturally in the moment is kind of feels more objective.
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, I don't think objective is the right word for it at all. I think what you're doing is you're trusting your subjective instinct that's telling you, ooh, there's something there, I'm gonna go digging a little there. The alien symbols on the walls of the bar are another thing where, yes, I'm focusing on Hansi sort of tracking across the screen there, but then, you know, he almost gives me this energy that leads me up onto the wall to see, oh, there's those symbols that we saw in Hank's house last week. Yeah, use your eye. Let your eye settle where it does naturally, and then sort of develop the habit of making yourself look around and just take note of the proportions of the shot, and, you know, everything is valuable, I think. Just see how the show responds to your questions when you're piqued by something like that. That was a wonderful topic to kick off on, Gus. You're pretty good at this.
You too, man.
We are extra polite today.
So you mentioned seeing those symbols that we saw in Hank's office. There's a few other
Oh, really? Did I miss
other
some?
appearances.
UFO appearances.
Salon Kitty noted that in the scene where Ed talks to the gas station attendant, there's a little UFO sticker next to the guy, and it literally says, "We are not alone," is the text for this bumper sticker.
Love it.
And then if you look at the newspaper after Ed drops it and it's floating around, the top story is satellite data to be collected in Australia.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's just like small things in this episode. And again, it's like, obviously this is the show playing a little bit of a game with you. There's not like a whole lot of meaning, I think, to derive.
Well, let me ask you this, out of that. Do you think it is a failure if all these UFO references don't add to something concrete by the end of the season?
I mean, I think it depends on your definition of concrete. We've talked about before how all this UFO stuff is just sort of, you know, removes you a little bit and gives you like a different perspective on things. And so I think that it's already been successful at doing that. To me, I would like to see it actualize.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. It's in something plot-based.
I don't know if it has to be plot-based, but I think that it has to be. You know, I hate to say this, but I do want to know whether or not in the world of this show, aliens exist and are watching.
Exactly. That's
these
what
events.
I'm getting at.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
I thought about this last night because I'm starting to feel that perhaps all the alien references will not add up to anything more than they are. And I am actually satisfied with that. I'm fine with that because I do feel that it's just made us think about the concept of these events being interpreted in different ways. And that's such an important theme throughout the season. We've talked about it here on Polite Fight again and again. It just inserted this idea of alien interpretations into the mix. So in keeping with the sort of philosophical bent of this episode of Polite Fight, I wanted to talk about this key line early in the episode. This self-actualization guru that Peggy's talking to says, the human mind, aroused by an insistence for meaning,
seeks and finds nothing but contradiction and nonsense.
And this gets at what I think is a really important concept, not just for this season of Fargo, but for the show as a whole, which is this postmodern idea of the detachment of signifier from signified. In particular, the detachment of narrative from actual reality, which in postmodernism is a really messy idea. And I think what happens here in this episode is we see people using narratives that have formed about them, using the power of those narratives, even though the narratives aren't grounded in reality. When Ed is talking to Mike Milligan, he says, maybe you've heard of me, I'm the butcher of Laverne. And Mike Milligan says, yes, I have heard of you, I like your style. He's using this butcher of Laverne narrative, even though he knows it's bullshit, We sort of see the flip side of this when Hansi goes into the bar and Hansi tells his own story. I've had 3 tours in Vietnam, Purple Heart. It has no potency in this context. So he instead buys into the Wounded Knee story, right? Even though it doesn't actually apply to him at all.
Didn't you guys try to start your own country a while back? Wounded Knee?
And when the guys step outside and they have the confrontation, he shoots both guys in the knee. He's quite literally taking this narrative and applying its power to his own ends.
And I love the way, there's such a great sense of how tired he is of this. And he says, I'm tired of this life, but it's just it plays out so well, and a lot of it is the performance. A lot of it is just the disgustingness of the spit in that cup. But it's also just the way that they keep these guys out of focus the entire time. When he shoots them, they're not in focus. It's all on his gun. It's just he is not looking. He doesn't even really care about them. He is just so tired of dealing with this stuff. It just feels all the same to him. Again, a lot of different interpretations you can take from it. But to me, the effect on you watching it is that you literally can't focus on them. They don't become characters, which also makes it easier for you to embrace, I think, the fact that he shoots these guys. But it's just it's one of those choices that affects the way that you feel, even though it's not necessarily saying something specific to you.
Right, it's just sort of giving us a subliminal insight into Hansi's state of mind. Great point. Yeah, I like that.
And, this discussion ties in really well with the title of this episode, Lop Lop.
Yeah, tell me. I didn't know what that meant.
So one of the commenters, Verbal Kint, noted that Lop Lop is a figure created by the surrealist and Dadaist artist Max Ernst. Lop Lop is this alter ego, this bird-like alter ego for himself that he creates as a narrator and a commenter for some of his collage novels. And so it's this sort of nonsense thing that is commenting on the action and bringing meaning to it that might not necessarily be there.
But on an elevated level of abstraction, right?
Yes.
What we'd call a meta level, and I hate to use that term so much because it's so crude, but really what we're talking about is sort of another level of distance and abstraction above the text itself.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, this idea of the alter ego ties in really well with what you're talking about too, where Ed is able to create this alter or use the alter ego for himself. And it also ties in really well with the idea of just being the self that you want to be. Ed just is the self that he wants to be. Hansi decides he's going to be the self that he wants to be now. And that's what Peggy has been trying to do all season.
Self-actualize.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Oh, wow, I love it. Okay, I wanted to talk real quick. I know we've talked a lot about split screens. I love that split screen with Peggy and Ed in that early scene where they're driving, and the split screen comes up when it feels like they're on different tracks.
Totally
like,
different.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it feels like they're just having separate conversations with themselves. And then later in the episode, we have a sort of standard telephone split screen with Ed and Mike Milligan. And what I like about this one is that it uses the split screen to an opposite effect. This is like a reunion almost, because it's this week's storyline coming together with the stuff we saw last week, which we've been anticipating, right? We've been waiting for when are we going to connect everything back up together. And it just shows how one device can have a very different meaning, different valence in different contexts.
Yeah, totally. And I love the way that when Ed comes up in the Mike Milligan show and his split screen comes up, it's literally like filling in the empty space on the left side of the screen. And it really feels like, again, this is one of those things that's, I think, maybe pushing it too far. Or maybe I think this is one of those things that's maybe pushing it too far, but it's like, here, he's literally the missing piece. He's filling in the empty space, the missing piece from last.
No, you shouldn't do that, what you just did. Don't apologize for yourself. I think
can't
that's a
help
good
it.
insight.
Yeah, I
You
think
don't
it's...
have to couch it. You don't. Hey, if we step over the line a little bit, that's just because we're enthusiastic and we're putting ideas out there. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't give yourself short shrift, Gus. Damn it.
All right, well, here's an observation, a connection that I think is totally legitimate. My favorite thing, I love this. Commenter Mike Smith noted that the director of this episode and the last episode, same guy, Keith Gordon, is the kid, the main character in Christine, the John Carpenter movie about the Stephen King novel about the killer car. And this is one of the best movies ever. This is literally, I watched this movie for the first time at a horror movie marathon earlier this year, and I have been obsessed with it. I've been telling everybody to watch it. It is one of the best fucking movies ever. And I love that this kid, who gives an incredible performance, became the very awesome director of these two episodes.
My college screenwriting professor wrote the screenplay for that movie.
Oh, you had the best college screenwriting professor. That movie's fucking incredible.
He did a good job.
Oh my God, I love that movie. Anyway, go watch Christine, everybody, after watching Polite Fight, because it's...
Is there any connection between the...
I don't think you can really...
We're not going to make the Christine Fargo connection?
Good filmmaking is the connection, I think.
Hey, thanks for your comments. Gus, thanks for your always skillful editing. I'm John Tatey for Gus Spellman. We'll see you next week on Polite Fight. Bye.
Bye, guys.